Hey, good morning, everyone. Josh's Severe Weather. Happy Thursday to you. Hope you all are having a great week. I am actually going to be traveling later today. My wife and I are celebrating our 10th anniversary, and we're getting out of town to do a few things. So I will not be back until Monday. So I hope you guys have a great weekend. I'm going to spend a lot of this video, probably the first 15 minutes or so, talking about the tropics and how active we are right now. Despite the El Nino, the warm waters seem to be winning out here, which is not anything I am completely shocked by. In fact, if you saw my forecast earlier this season, you knew that I was talking about this being kind of an unprecedented season, with the fact that we are looking at much above average tropical activity despite the El Nino in the Atlantic. So I'm going to talk about threats coming to the Caribbean in particular here next week. I'll also take a look here at Super Typhoon Bolivan in the Western Pacific, which is quite the beast out there. And then we're going to spend the last 10 minutes talking about severe weather, especially in Florida, but also across the Central Plains. So that'll be that. And Monday next week, I don't think we'll be talking severe weather. At that point, we'll be talking tropics and more significant changes coming in the longer range towards Halloween. So let me share my screen with you all, and I really hope you are having a blessed day. And right now, things are okay. We do have the system that is not tropical heading into Florida. That's going to skip quickly across into the Western Atlantic and affect Bermuda here late tonight and tomorrow. But next week, we do have to keep an eye on at least one system, if not two, which will be developing. The gyre here over Central America could become active later in the week or next weekend. And this area is a little uncertain right now, but I do think we're talking at least heavy rain and concentrated thunderstorms. Where it goes is still quite uncertain. The models that were showing it trying to come up into the Gulf are backing off, which does not surprise me because we've got strong fronts dropping south, and that kind of protects the Gulf Coast. It doesn't mean we need to let our guard down if you're in Florida or Cuba or even the northern Gulf Coast. It just means right now things are not looking at this point to be a threat, and I don't want to hype it up to be one until I see a much greater signal for something like that. But I am more concerned about what's coming off of the African coast. We have Tropical Storm Shawn, which actually is now a depression. It's kind of weakened some due to wind shear, and that is not the one I'm worried about. It's actually the one after it, which is going to be more of a lower latitude storm. And once Shawn dissipates or gets sheared away here, there is a window for this system to approach the islands towards next weekend. That is, of course, 9 or 10 days away. And as you all know, in the tropics, a forecast for something 9 to 10 days off is not going to be super accurate. But I am seeing support for something that may be affecting the islands here and heading into the Eastern Caribbean. So that is something I'm definitely going to watch for you guys. With Shawn, yesterday we moved up the list to 19 named storms. My forecast was 18. Of course, I was wrong. Who is going to get that right, just to be honest? The European, though, did show 20 storms with its forecast in July, and people scratched their heads and said, there's no way that's right. Well, 20 could even be underdone. But the top 5 list is within reach here. With our next storm, the next name would be Tammy. We'd move up into a tie for 4th with 20. 2 years ago, I forgot about this season, 2021. That was the year of Ida. We would get up to 21, and that is certainly within reach. And then the two that I don't think we're going to touch are 2005. That was the year of Katrina and Rita and Wilma. And then 2020 was the year of Laura, Isaias, Delta, Zeta. Gosh, so many storms in 2020 that year. We just don't need to repeat that year ever again. That was a nightmare every year, even outside of tropical season. So anyway, right now, Shawn is now down to tropical depression strength. Another wave has moved off of Africa. And this is very unusual. We saw waves coming off of Africa developing in June, which has pretty much never happened. July was kind of quiet. Then it picked back up in August and September. Usually things shut down, but we are seeing what's called a Kelvin wave, which is increasing thunderstorm development coming off of Africa. And despite some wind shear here, we're still seeing development this time of the year, which is very unusual. Typically, when waves come across Africa this time of the year, they just get wind sheared to death, and then maybe they try to come back if they survive towards the Caribbean or towards the Bahamas or Central America. And maybe we see development closer into here, but this system looks poised to develop. It's going to take some time to do so. Well, there is a 20% chance it does that in the next 2 days. Not a great chance, but as we get to 7 days, a 30% chance. And some of my models show that happening and a few don't. But I tend to lean towards the ones that do show it happening based on what we're seeing going on here in the upper atmosphere. So here's a look at the big picture. And I'm going to pull my pen out here and circle a few features for you guys to follow along. I did make my cursor bigger. A few of you guys recommended I do that, and I'm still learning technology, believe it or not, after how many years now. But I am going to go ahead and try to make things as easy as I can for you guys. So here is a look. Oh gosh, what's going on? You guys can't even see this, but here's a look at our frontal system with low pressure moving through the eastern Gulf. That's going to cross Florida later this morning and afternoon, and then zip quickly towards the Bermuda Triangle here overnight and early tomorrow. The pressures with it will probably lower, but it will be attached to a front, so it's highly unlikely we see a named system out of this. But do expect to see tropical storm conditions in Bermuda around this time tomorrow morning. It's going to be a quick hitting storm with a lot of rain. Zipping through here, the westerlies of the jet stream. You can see how the moisture feed out of the Pacific crosses the Gulf. It enhances around Florida. It comes right through to this trough here that circles up to this upper level system here over the central Atlantic. And it's even latched on to an upper level system here northeast of the Azores and the eastern Atlantic. So just one massive El Nino-like jet stream that kind of wavers in this direction. Now, this is what's responsible for the wind shear, believe it or not, that's kind of killing things off with Shawn. That's now a tropical depression. You can see there's a circulation in here, but wind shear coming through this direction here. Dry air in place over the eastern Caribbean around a region of high pressure. And what that's doing is it's just causing the thunderstorms from Shawn to basically get sheared off to the north and east. Now, this next system we're going to watch here coming off of Africa, you can see Senegal and Guinea-Bissau over here. These are the Cape Verde Islands, is going to fight the same wind shear for the weekend and early next week. So I don't think it develops. However, as we see all these troughs here in the Atlantic begin to pull away in this direction, and this high shifts a little bit more to the north, and here we do have a window for this system to come underneath, and it may not come that far down, maybe more in this direction in here or in this direction in here. But it's going to be in a spot where the wind shear is going to improve. It'll lessen, and that will allow some development. To what intensity, though, is still up for grabs. I'm going to kind of show you what some of the models that develop this do show. On the Pacific side, we're going to be active in this area. Keep an eye on the gyre here. There will probably be a named system out of this coming close to Mexico again, of all places, but that's going to be about 5 or 6 days away. And then we have to keep an eye on what's going on here, as some models showing that coming into the Caribbean and potentially being a weaker system up in here. Probably not a strong hurricane, but I never say never at this time of the year. So that's what we're looking at right now. I'm going to get my cursor away here, and here's a look at the infrared. And you can see very clearly our system moving through Florida and the eastern Gulf. I'll zoom into that. Very quiet in the Caribbean, active on the Pacific side of Central America and over the monsoon trough in the Pacific. Here's our big storm system over Wyoming and Nebraska. It is going to move eastward and pick up moisture from the Gulf and create likely some intense storms later today across Nebraska, and then tomorrow over Iowa, Missouri, maybe Illinois. Here is a look at the Gulf, and you can see we still don't have really much of a circulation center. You see a lot of fast flow out of the southwest. That's why we don't have a named system. I know some of you had brought that up in some of the comments last week. I just never thought it was going to develop due to the fact that the winds are so strong aloft. But regardless of development, we've seen wind gusts of 60 miles per hour near the coast of Louisiana, and we're going to see gusts up to 50 off the Florida coast, but not really a tropical system, just a nasty cyclone. That's really all we can call it. It's pulling moisture out of the tropics, but really it's got such amount of wind shear with it that all of the severe weather from it is being caused by the stronger winds aloft, not by a tropical process. So that's kind of where we're at with that. Here's the eastern Atlantic. You can see, Shawn, there's a little bit of a naked circulation here right around 37 west. Really nothing I'm super worried about because you see all this wind shear coming in from the north and west. So the models that try to develop Shawn into a stronger storm have backed off, not surprisingly. But you can see the next wave behind it. This is Invest 94L over at 20 west, so it's way off to the east. These kind of storms are 2 weeks away from potentially the U.S., if we even talk about the U.S., but about 10 days away from the islands. And that is something I am going to watch because we are going to see more favorable conditions within some time. Now, the European ensemble shows possibility of tropical storm force winds over Bermuda. That's pretty likely here. A decent chance of depression conditions here over the central Atlantic. And here's our next wave. And as we get further into time, the possibilities do lessen, but you can see it's still about a 70% chance of a depression by next Tuesday and Wednesday. And then even about a 40 to 50% chance, and then down to 20% chance. And this is normal to see the chances drop in time as our solutions diverge. However, that's still a pretty decent chance. 20%, 8 days out, certainly is something that we can't ignore. At the same time, the chances for something in the central American area are lower, but I do think something could certainly still form. It just may take a while before that happens. Here's a look at the European ensembles. Non-tropical low crossing south of Bermuda. Shawn, very weak system on most of our ensembles here. Let me stop that. And only one or two solutions try to bend it back to the west now. Everything else pretty much kills it. So it's very unlikely we have a stronger storm. One ensemble shows that happening, but the next feature is lower in latitude. You can see our high right here. That's actually going to steer it more on a westerly path. And there are more solutions showing a developing system here. This is next Tuesday. And then as we head towards about Thursday, we do have spread in the models as you would expect, but we do have a lot of solutions that are moving towards the islands at the end of next week. So my video Monday is going to take a closer look at that for you. Oh, by the way, in the Pacific, we will probably have at least one storm here towards the Gulf of Tehuantepec and the Mexican Riviera, which just had max a few days ago. We could see kind of a similar setup here in about 7 or 8 days. We do have some solutions that do try to develop something here in the Western Caribbean, but uncertainty is low. I'm showing it on the map because climatologically that is favored, but I would not be shocked if all the models that have shown that potential continue to delay it, because it's going to take some time before we really do get that moisture transport and a better environment for thunderstorm development. So we'll be watching it, but I'm more concerned about what's coming farther to the east, as we do have more of an intense looking system. And you can see a ton of spread here in the Caribbean, but several solutions keep it weaker and go into the Eastern Caribbean, where it probably is going to try to die, but we'll keep an eye on the Western Caribbean after that. And we do have solutions that take it up through the Leeward Islands towards where Philippe came, and a few that try to copy Lee here and make it a stronger storm and recurve it. So any of those solutions still are possible. Here's a look at the Canadian model here, and it shows Shawn basically dying by the end of the weekend here. And then we see our next system developing behind it next Wednesday or Thursday. The next name would be Tammy. And we do see something weak here towards Honduras, but that is still very uncertain. So I would say Tammy is more of a likely scenario here. We see a tropical storm by this time next week, moving into the northeastern Caribbean and then recurving and moving up through the Virgin Islands. And that's just one model, so I would not get too carried away with it, but we've seen the Canadian kind of hint at this for a while. Here comes the development next Tuesday night and Wednesday, moving pretty quickly off to the west-northwest. And then if this model is right, we do have tropical storm conditions affecting the northern Windward Islands and the Leeward Islands by next Friday, and then heading up into the Virgin Islands and maybe Puerto Rico by the start of the following weekend. But this is just one model run, and again, I want to see more models showing it. The GFS is going to struggle to develop this because it typically does. The Icon model, the German model, kind of shows a similar setup to the Canadian here, where we do have something forming here at about 40 west next Monday night and Tuesday into a depression and then a storm. And the Icon takes off here by 50 west and has a Category 1 hurricane, maybe a 2 by Thursday. And typically speaking, a storm moving in that direction is going to try to make a right curve, but it will be pretty close to the northern Leeward Islands if it does so. Here's a closer look at the Icon, and again, just one model run, but you can see it has the same development around 12 north and 40 west over the main development region, and gradual intensification to hurricane strength before next Thursday. And this is a little more extreme than the other models, but it is showing that potential in here as wind shear lessens. So we're going to have to keep an eye on it. You can see it's gaining some latitude at this point, so it's possible it recurves to the east of the islands. It's also possible that this takes longer to happen and it's more of a threat. So keep an eye on that here. Here's a look at Shawn. You can see the circulation center here is kind of naked. You see the low cloud swirl, and then you see thunderstorms west of it, thunderstorms east and north of it. That's all due to wind shear. And I think that's great news in that we are probably not going to see this come back to tropical storm strength. Some models have shown that, and now they're backing off. And we may have a remnant low here making a turn back to the left sometime later in the weekend. At this point, when it gets up into here, the wind shear is going to be too strong for it to survive. Here are the tropical models. They do show the bend back to the left, but nothing survives it all the way over towards the Leeward Islands. Here's the GFS ensemble, and you can see the point stop right here at, I don't know why it says south, but at about 50 west. Aside from a couple of very weak solutions, this is probably dying in here, which is great news. And the intensity forecast, we're seeing many more solutions keeping this below tropical storm strength. A couple still show it getting up to that, so we'll keep an eye on it. Here's the HAFS tropical model, and it is not impressed with Shawn. It's killing it by Saturday night. and really not even much of a circulation left over here by early next week. Here's 94L, and this is the one I do think we are going to have to watch. Until it forms, models are still going to disagree with what's going on. And yes, work on your tires here. If you're a discount tire person, I actually am. So that's why Tropical Tidbits is showing our buddy here. All right, why did I even say that? I don't know what's going on with me, but the twist is pretty impressive. It's farther south, and it may not gain a lot of latitude until next week. So this is obviously something the Caribbean needs to keep an eye on. The Canadian model takes it up here through Anguilla, Montserrat, Guadeloupe, and then recurves it towards St. Croix and St. Thomas. The ensembles and the control keep it on that path as well. And until we get closer to development, these are not really going to pick up too much on it. The European, though, shows several solutions that continue off to the west towards the Leeward Islands. We have a stronger solution that comes and recurves to the east, and that is certainly possible as well. And the GFS ensemble says it is going to stay low and it may not develop for a while, but if it does, it is going to start making more of a bend after 50 degrees west. So right now, way too soon to say if it's going to hit the Caribbean, but I think it is a potential threat. Here's a look at the intensity forecast, and you can see more models show this becoming a tropical storm than Shawn. So we are obviously going to keep an eye on things. The time frame, Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday of next week. So that's what I'm going to be watching for you guys. And then in the Western Pacific, fortunately, no threat to land, but we did have Typhoon Bivin move by just north of Guam at 80 miles per hour a couple days ago. And then he or she, I don't even know what Bivin means, but went to town and rapidly intensified here to Category 5 super typhoon status. Winds at least 180 miles per hour, possibly even close to 200. A menacing storm system, still has winds of 180 miles per hour, but fortunately recurving. I say fortunately, Japan obviously is not going to feel anything but high surf out of this, but as this weakens and becomes extra tropical, it will very much intensify the jet stream in a couple of weeks and could lead to a cold intrusion into the central and eastern U.S. along with severe weather towards Halloween timeframe. When you have a big system like this, it typically reshapes the jet stream, allows for stronger dips, and that allows for colder air to come down and also stronger wind flow aloft, which can lead to typhoons. Here's the best track, and it certainly intensified very quickly a couple of days ago. Very impressive to watch. A buzzsaw cyclone making a right turn now, but not showing any major signs of weakening. Will probably stay a super typhoon for at least another 24 hours, if not more than that. Here is the infrared, and you can see 905 millibars, making it one of our strongest storms of the season, along with Mawar, which was late in May. Both of those were around this intensity. We don't know exactly how strong. We're just estimating based on satellite. Winds are 180 to 190 miles per hour. We are likely going to see an eye wall replacement soon, which should start bringing those down. But nonetheless, a great storm to watch and a great storm to not have to stress about because it's not a threat to land. All right, let's talk the states. Florida under the gun here with potential tornadoes. We do have a slight risk along I-4 and all the way up to Jacksonville and Lake City and Live Oak, Florida. And there is a 5% chance of tornadoes. We've seen potentially a few already in the North Clearwater Beach area, suspected tornado. A look at the radar from Radar Omega here shows that we've got over 9.5 million Americans that have a 5% chance of seeing tornadoes. That includes Jacksonville, Tampa, St. Pete, Orlando, and Gainesville. A 2% chance of tornadoes in Melbourne, Palm Bay, and then also up across the upper Midwest. That threat's going to come to an end this evening. We do see a mesoscale discussion, which I'll talk about in a second here. And currently, as of this time, a radar indicated tornado in the Salt Springs area heading towards Palm Coast and Flagler Beach here in Volusia County. I believe it's Volusia in north central Florida. And you can see additional cells coming up from the Gulf here north of Spring Hill towards Citrus County and maybe towards Ocala later on this morning. So that's what we're going to watch. This is a pretty big rainmaker. I'm got my windows open in Raleigh and somehow it's raining here. I didn't think it was going to get quite this far north, but sure enough, we are dealing with that. Tornado watch across the Big Bend over the northern and central parts of the peninsula. That is until 9 this morning. A new watch will likely be issued. You can see that the significant tornado parameter is a little bit more elevated along the I-4 corridor from just north of Tampa all the way through the Orlando area. That's the area that we're going to have to watch this morning for a little bit more rotation. And here's why. We've got a strong jet streak moving through northern Florida and southern Georgia. That is bringing enhanced wind flow and some wind shear to this portion of Florida here. Wind gusts at 700 millibars, which is about 15 to 30,000 feet up, somewhere in there. Winds are over 40 knots, which is about 50 miles per hour, and that is going to sustain these storms into the early part of this afternoon, and then we'll see weakening beyond that. And then we see colder air coming down here later in the weekend. This will not produce severe weather, but it will bring colder air in next week. Energy helicity is how much lower level and mid-level turning we see in the atmosphere, and you can see there's a fair amount of that until about 10 this morning, and then those numbers do slowly come down, but we still have strong wind flow, which can lead to stronger storms here into central Florida, south of I-4 early this evening, and then things should move away after that. Here's a look at the forecast radar, and you can see most of the action is going to be north of I-4 up until lunchtime. Then we see a band of showers and storms gradually pushing southward. This is 5 o'clock this evening. That's the front itself, and once that moves through, things should gradually taper down here, but we could still see a few showers and storms moving through places like Fort Myers, Sarasota, all the way over to south of Vero Beach, so about Port St. Lucie and Indian River counties, and then down to the Palm Beach area as we get later into the afternoon tomorrow. So don't be completely shocked if we didn't see a little bit of severe weather in parts of South Florida here tomorrow afternoon. Here's a closer look at the HRRR, and you can see our showers and storms this morning that we have to keep an eye on. Some of these cells are kind of more discrete. So east of Gainesville, Ocala, over to maybe north of Daytona Beach, Palm Coast, and then we have to watch this line of storms that comes through around lunchtime from Jacksonville down to about Homosassa Springs, and then shifting south and east towards the I-4 corridor late this afternoon, and then dying off this evening. We'll still have a few storms to keep an eye on overnight tonight. I think overall that threat lessens. With additional heating tomorrow, though, keep an eye on what's still streaking in off the Gulf Coast in places like Cape Coral, Fort Myers, Naples, Bonita, and over to the East Coast around Port St. Lucie, West Palm Beach, maybe even into Broward County here tomorrow evening, and then quieter weather is expected over the weekend. Total rain from the European is still going to be pretty heavy here through tomorrow evening, amounts of 1 to 3 inches over northern Florida, central and southern Georgia, and South Carolina. Lower amounts as we get up to Atlanta and Charlotte and Wilmington, generally ½ inch to 1 inch, and then smaller amounts towards I-40 here through this evening before things move away. South Florida is not going to see a lot of rain until we get into the second part of the weekend, when we could, typically speaking, see between 1 inch or 2, mainly north of Alligator Alley. Here is a look at the central part of the country. We do have a slight risk in effect, including tornadoes over northern Kansas, central and eastern Nebraska, and western Iowa, with the greatest threat coming later in the afternoon and evening. Some enhanced tornado activity is possible across this area around Grand Island and Hastings. Tomorrow we see a lesser threat for tornadoes, but still a chance across parts of Iowa and over to places like Quincy, Illinois, northeastern parts of Missouri. A threat for strong winds as well. Not really a hail threat. There's a bit of a hail threat, but not really a huge threat. And we could see wind damage all the way down to St. Louis in the afternoon, even into the Ozarks region, and as far east as the Wabash River here towards the end of the afternoon on Friday. Quieter weather on Saturday. We could see a few stronger storms. I didn't really zoom in well, but over eastern North Carolina, but I don't think that's really going to be a big outbreak. And here's the reason why. Big cyclone moving into Nebraska here this afternoon. Lots of winds out of the south and west. You can see they turn around to more southerly here this afternoon over Nebraska, and that turn is going to determine if we see rotation in these storms. This will swing through and broaden some as we get into Illinois here by the end of tomorrow, and then we'll see cooler air coming down on the backside here. I wish I had more time to talk about it, but I just don't, just to be honest with you guys. But real quick, let's take a look at the HRRR, and you'll see wind shear will start to pick up, and we have enhanced energy helicity here over this area here near the Nebraska-Kansas border, and that will turn northeast. We could see an arcing line of storms and some supercells here around 4 o'clock Central Time, mainly to the west of Lincoln, and then advancing north and east. And then those indices come down before things get into Omaha, but maybe still a threat even later in this evening into southwestern Iowa. Here's a quick look at the radar velocity, or not really velocity, but reflectivity. And you can see these storms are going to start getting going here mid-afternoon. And as we get into the early evening, we see kind of an arc here that we need to keep an eye on near the Kansas border and up into east central Nebraska. That arc continues eastward and lessens with time, but moves into Iowa, northwestern Missouri here late this evening and overnight. And we could see some snow back here across the Panhandle region. Here's a look at our total precipitation forecast. Really wet across South Dakota, northern Nebraska, southern Minnesota, all the way towards Chicago and Wisconsin. Could see amounts up to close to 2 inches in Stevens Point, even over an inch and a half in places like Muskegon and towards Lansing on Saturday. So not a great day for Big Ten football tomorrow, or Saturday, I should say. Chicagoland, more off to the northern suburbs near the Wisconsin border. Des Moines could see over an inch and a half, and then you get lower into lower areas here of the Midwest, the Missouri River Valley, and those amounts come down, but the threat for severe weather comes up due to the fact that we could see a few supercells. We're under winter storm warnings in the Casper, Wyoming area over the higher elevations, and most of you probably don't care, but it's kind of cool to see for those of you that are crazy weather fans like I am, and up to 3 feet of snow are possible in the Tetons here, mainly today, tonight, and early tomorrow. Here's a closer look at Nebraska real quick for you guys here. I did want to zoom in and show you. Here's where the threat for tornadoes, I think, is greatest. About 4 o'clock near Kearney and Grand Island, and then 5 o'clock shifting east to those areas. And then maybe Lincoln is under the gun, and all the way up to about Sioux City here between 6 and 9 o'clock. Omaha, keep an eye on this around 9 or 10 tonight. Then things shift, and we just deal with heavy rain on the backside as it turns colder. Looking at Iowa here real quick. We see showers and storms, probably not much severe weather, but things clear out. And then tonight we have a more favorable setup for some stronger winds and maybe a few tornadoes to places like Ames, Iowa, Fort Dodge, Denison. Most of that's going to be later this evening. Then we could see additional storm development tomorrow afternoon around and south and east of Des Moines over to about Burlington and Davenport towards early tomorrow evening. This is a little deceptive. We could see a few sneaky severe storms in this area. And real quick, let's look at Missouri. I'm actually heading to St. Louis, so I may be running into this tomorrow afternoon, but not a lot going on here until we get into the overnight hours. We'll see a few scattered showers and storms. Some of them could be stronger, and then things ramp up in the morning tomorrow around Columbia to Quincy. These storms are going to come close to the St. Louis area around lunchtime, but more up towards Springfield and Peoria. Then we see a second band of showers and storms potentially with our front around Quincy on the west side of St. Louis around 5, 6, 7 o'clock tomorrow evening. And this should gradually weaken as it moves across Illinois tomorrow night. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for your time. If you did enjoy this video, please consider subscribing. If you're a longtime subscriber, please consider becoming a member if you feel led to. It's $9.99 a month, or you can make a one-time donation if you'd like. I'm not hungry for your money, trust me, but every little bit does help me build my reach and increase my offering. And honestly, what I really think helps increase my offering is the Lord God. He is a great God, and I give him all the glory. I have to glorify God every day because without him, I would not be here. I know a lot of you may not believe in God, and that's okay. I didn't either for 30 years. I'm not going to judge you on that, but that's just my story. My life changed about 10 years ago, 11 years ago, when I decided to put my worth in God and what God saw me and created me as, and not what the world saw me as, not what my paycheck was, not who I was employed by or how much of a college education I had. Honestly, like, people see the worth in having master's degrees and PhDs and degrees of medicine. I think those are great achievements in the world to have. But God doesn't care how much you've achieved on this earth so much as how you've grown in him. Just my faith, my personal belief. But I will say that I was reading a verse this morning. I was a little discouraged. I got this new scale. I jumped on it, and I've kind of struggled with my weight a little bit. And a lot of that, is my aging, and some of it's hormones, some of it's medicine I take. But honestly, I think I just get too stressed out and worry too much about what the world thinks and not what God thinks of me. But I'm a healthy person. I take care of myself. I just am not, if God wanted me to be skinny, I think he would have, just to be honest. But I will say this. The world wants to constantly have you compare with other people and put your worst and put it up against other people's best. I see it on social media all the time. People love to show their best moments, but maybe not talk about the dark moments they're going through. There's a lot of mental illness out there. I think a lot of us deal with mental health challenges, and that's perfectly normal. But what I will say is that God promises us some great things. The prophet Jeremiah said, Jeremiah 29:10-14, King James Version, "For thus saith the Lord, that after 70 years be accomplished at Babylon, I will visit you and perform my good word toward you in causing you to return to this place. For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end." I've seen other versions say, The Lord has declared, I know the plans I have for you, plans for you to prosper. But back to the King James Version, then shall ye call upon me, and ye shall go and pray unto me, and I will hearken unto you. And ye shall seek me and find me when ye shall search for me with all your heart, and I will be found of you, saith the Lord. And I will turn away your captivity, and I will gather you from all the nations and from all the places whither I have driven you, saith the Lord. And I will bring you again into the place whence I caused you to be carried away captive. I'm not a preacher. You guys see me stumbling over the Bible, but I am a believer, and I believe we are commissioned to share this good news with other people. This is my calling. The weather is my gift, predicting it, sharing that with you, but this is my calling. It's to share the word of God. He doesn't mention Jesus in this vision that Jeremiah has, but he does foretell that the Lord is going to carry you away from being a captive and bring you back to him. And that is the love of God, that despite all of our sins, despite all of our weaknesses, despite everything that we do to each other, evil things, the Lord is a good Lord, and he is going to help you to eventually get carried into a place where you're no longer captive. He's going to bring Jesus Christ into your life, allow you to live eternally with him, because he so loved the world. He gave his own son, Jesus Christ, to die on the cross and then rise again so that we can live with Jesus one day. And that is the great news I wanted to share with you. I'm not a preacher. I'm going to say that every day. You don't have to be. Nobody's got to be perfect here. I'm not comparing myself to anybody out there. All I want to do is just share that good news with you. And I want to pray for you, because I personally believe talking to God and honestly, talking to the world and telling them how big your God is a lot more powerful than telling your God what your problems are. So instead of telling God what your problems are, tell your problems how big your God is, because man, is that something. He will deliver us. He tells all of these prophets that. He's told them, and this is 5,000-6,000 years ago. I don't even know when this was documented, but many years ago. If you think they had big problems then, just look at what's going on now. We still have a big God. We just need to keep him in our lives. That's just my opinion. But anyway, I thank you all for your time today. Please feel free to list any prayer requests. I will pray over you and for you. And please pray for me as I travel here. I'll see you all again early next week. Have a blessed day. See you then.